Hello, everyone. Welcome to part one of season 3, episode 7 of Youth Empowerment Radio. I am your host, Carmen, and today I get the pleasure of speaking with Luke Mickelson, founder of Sleep in Heavenly Peace, a nonprofit that builds and delivers beds to children all across the nation. In part one, Luke shares with us a powerful origin story, how bed building builds community, and the impact of delivering a bed for the first time to a family in need. Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoy part one of this episode.
Thanks, Carmen, for having me. This is great.
Yeah, I'm excited for the audience to get to know you a little bit more and about the nonprofit space, or not the nonprofit space, the nonprofit that you're a part of. I'm curious for folks that don't know, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of what led you to the work you're doing right now.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on.
Good morning, Luke. Thank you so much for being here.
I don't think a lot of podcasters get the credit they deserve. I'm sure you make $1 million doing this.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, most of the time you're spending a lot of money. No, I mean, really, thank you, because the platform that you guys provide for good stories and inspiration to those listeners, I love podcasts and I love hearing about people's stories. And so they wouldn't be possible without you. So thanks for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I tell everybody, listen, I'm just a farm kid from Idaho, but I think that's important to understand and know, because I think when you listen to someone on a podcast or you see them on TV or read an article about them, I think people put you on a pedestal. Yeah, and almost in a way to excuse that, oh, they're special people, and they did amazing things, which the reality is I'm just a regular farm kid, and anybody's can be a regular farm kid out serving the community. So, and I grew up in a small town, it was only about 3,500 people.
Okay.
And the beauty about living in a small town is also the same thing as a curse, and that's everybody and they know you,
Yep.
which
I
is
had the same thing.
yeah, and you look back at that time period, as you're an adult now, and you can see the benefits that came from that. I know that a lot of my sense of community and support and camaraderie with fellow human beings, come from living in such a tight town. I remember there was a time when, my parents split up when I was just entering high school. And that Christmas, the following Christmas, I knew was going to be pretty lean. It was just my mom and 5 kids. My dad was out of the picture, and we kind of expected that. But then I walked out in to get the mail one day, and in the mailbox was an envelope full of $1,500 in cash. And
Oh, wow.
and that's just what our community did. They just helped each other. You see someone pulled off the side of the road, you're going to pull over and just see if they're okay, and I enjoyed that. I enjoyed being with people. In a small school that I grew up in, if you could pick up a ball and throw it in any direction with any sort of accuracy, you're going to play sports whether you like it or not. And that was me. I actually didn't. There was only 2 weeks the entire year where I didn't have a game or practice. Which actually probably kept me in the straight and narrow a little bit, or as much as possible. But again, I loved the competitiveness of sports. I love the team aspect and working with one another, and I know I've carried that through my life. Right after high school, I went and served a mission for my church, and learned a lot of great things there. Again, working with people that you didn't know, and learning how to adjust to people that aren't the same character as you, and just all of that, and then talking to people and serving people. And my mission president gave me one of the best advice I had in my life, which was whatever career you end up going into, right, whatever work or whatnot, you need to view it as a way of serving others, of serving people, not just a job. And if you do that, you'll never work another day in your life, which, man, he was right.
Yeah.
When you have those hard days at work and you don't want to be there, getting out of bed is tough. When you look at it as, hey, you know what? These guys are counting on me. I'm serving them. They need me. Boy, it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I've always enjoyed that, because I feel like, and I've always taught, listen, if you want true joy in life, you got to stop looking at yourself. You got to see how you can help other people. right?
Mm-hmm.
And even though your problems don't go away, of course not, but they seem far less heavy. I
Mm-hmm.
think service can put you in a mindset of being able to see your issues, your problems in a perspective that make it manageable. I don't
Right.
know any other way to say it. And
Mm-hmm.
I've really tried to hone in on that.
Yeah.
And as I've grown in business, I found a good job, got married, had a couple of three kids, and was coaching, did all the small town stuff. I moved back to my small town. I wanted my
Yeah.
kids to experience that
Yeah.
that great town and the great people
Mm-hmm.
around it. And so yeah, I moved back. My kids were in school, and I started serving in my church in a
Mm-hmm.
position called a young men's president, which basically kind of like a youth pastor back east.
Mm-hmm.
They would call it. I was basically responsible for the spiritual growth, but really the activity of the weekly activity for the boys program, which was basically
Mm-hmm.
Boy Scouts. I wasn't a Boy Scout leader, but I was the leader of the Boy Scouts, right?
Right.
Well, and it was about this time when all of this happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was about 35 years old. This is
Mm-hmm.
2012.
Okay.
Carmen, I think we all go through a period of time in life. I mean, some people call it a midlife crisis. I don't know. All I know is I grew up with a single mom, right, who
Mm-hmm.
pounded it in our heads that you got to get your education, you got to get a good job so you can pay for your bills and take care of your family, which is all so true, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
watched my mom struggle with this. She had three
Mm-hmm.
jobs and five kids, and
Yeah.
it was
That's a
it was
lot.
tough. And
Mm-hmm.
so that was my measure of success, right? How hard I worked, how much money I could make. Well, I think you get into a period of time, at least for me, I got in this midlife area and started having kids, and,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know, things started shifting for me. I didn't value that as much as I used to. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
measure success. It didn't feel like success to me just because I had more zeros behind my paycheck. I
Mm-hmm.
started having some faith doubts as I got older and experienced other cultures and other religions and all of this stuff. You really start asking some hard questions of
Yeah,
yourself.
totally.
And the challenge is, well, I said the bad byproduct is when you don't get the answers you want, or really any answers, man, it's crappy.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
crappy. You don't you get in a little bit of a funk,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not a getting a funk type guy unless I'm dancing. But and I was in this funk for a couple years, right? No one really
Yeah.
knew about it. I'd mentioned a few
Mm.
things to my wife, but it was just hard to come out of. And no matter how much pep talking I gave myself, I couldn't find that passion I once
Mm.
had and that purpose and drive and commitment, or not commitment rather, but my path, my
Right.
journey.
Right.
It was just so blurry, and that's not a fun place to be in.
No. Yeah.
Well, sitting in this pit, if you will,
Right.
trying to make life happen. In my position at the church, I would attend these leadership meetings where we talk about things that are going on in the church, things that are going on in the community, people that we were helping. Well,
Mm-hmm.
one leader started talking about this family she had visited and how we were helping them, right? The mom was the local school bus driver. The dad suffered from some mental illness, had some issues, couldn't really hold a job, so financially they were struggling. And the
Mm-hmm.
reason why this family kind of caught my ear more than most is because in my small town, they lived in an apartment complex I didn't even know existed. And
Oh, really?
oh
Wow.
yeah, and I've been
Uh-huh.
riding my bike around this town since I've been 5. I
Yeah.
mean, come
It's
on.
wild how that happens, huh?
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait a minute, where's these guys at? And then she started talking about the things that she noticed that they needed,
Mm.
right? That of course they needed help with food and rent, and the kids didn't have any beds, and they needed rides to school, and they needed coats. And I said, whoa, 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 whoa. I stopped the meeting, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
said, did you just say the kids don't have any beds? And she says, yeah. And I'm like, well, I mean, they've got mattresses, right? And she says, no, they're just
Mm-hmm.
sleeping on the floor with blankets. And I don't know, Carmen, that hit me so hard. I'd
Yeah.
imagine it hit everybody else in the room too. But for me, I was like, just to think about kids sleeping on the floor, and I've got kids of my own, right? That
Mm-hmm.
was just a rough thought. And
Yeah.
then another thought came to me. As a leader and over a small group of boys, it's hard to find an activity to do during the week that doesn't involve a game or a screen or a computer or phone. It's a
Right.
tough time to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought to myself, here is a great opportunity that I could get an Xbox controller out of these boys' hands and put a drill in it, right? And teach them something, you know? I had never built furniture before in my life. I mean, I wasn't a stranger to tools. I mean, I had to use some of my wife's tools, by the way. But, you know, I'm a farm kid from Idaho. You just figure it out, right?
Right.
And I knew this would be a great service for the boys, obviously for the family as well. I didn't know how bad child bedlessness was. This is the only family I knew that had kids sleeping on the floor. And I thought, what a great service activity. So that night I went home and grabbed the tape measure and pen and paper and went down to my daughter's room. She had a bunk bed and I measured this bunk bed out, came up with a good design, and voila. You know, I went to the store, bought all the materials, and then the boys came over that week. And for, you know, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, those 3 nights, we had built this bunk bed for this family.
Oh, wow.
It was super fun, right? You know, and you know, there was a little thought in my head saying, listen, this is a great opportunity to teach these boys the joy of service, right? Like I've been taught, you know, what does it
Right.
mean to serve people and how that can benefit your own life, as well as appreciate the things they had. Like you had a bed, for crying out loud, right?
Right.
So we get
Right.
done with this, we get done with building this bed, right? And the word kind of got out in the community. You know, the kids would tell the parents or their siblings, and all of a sudden Saturday night came to deliver this bed, and there was like 30 people that showed up to my house.
Wow.
I'm like,
Beautiful.
oh,
Wow.
it was way awesome, you know, but we can't
Yeah.
send 30 people to this 2-bedroom apartment, right?
Right. Right.
So me and a bunch of leaders stayed back and cleaned my garage because this was like the very beginning of December, which in Idaho is not like a tropical place, trust me.
Right.
Um,
Yes.
and the next day at church, the boys just told me how amazing the experience was. You know, they got to see the kids, how excited they were. They got to see the conditions that the kids were sleeping in too, right? And that made an impression on these Boy Scouts. And so, you know, mission accomplished all the way around, right? The boys learned something, they appreciated something, they got the joy of service, they got to witness, you know, something that's happening right underneath their nose, right? The conditions that, you know, some people live in. And of course, we satisfied a child, a couple of kids that were sleeping on the floor. So it was
Wow.
amazing, right?
Yeah.
And you know, Carmen, for the first time in a long time, I kind of felt that little spark. It was a little spark of something, right?
Like a
And
spark, like
some
this is
passion.
where I want to go. Like this is what I want to do, kind of thing.
Exactly. It
Yeah.
maybe wasn't that strong, right?
Okay.
But it was
Yeah.
definitely that was cool. You know,
Yeah.
not only the process of building the beds and not only teaching the kids and seeing their joy, but to solve a problem like that, you know, that's cool.
Yeah.
Like I thought it was amazing.
Totally. Yeah.
And we had done service before. I mean, we'd done real wheelchair ramps and all those things before, but this one just hit differently for me. Well, the week goes by, right? Child bedlessness has been solved. You
You're
know,
like, there's none. Yeah.
there's no more
No more in
anywhere.
my community or
That's
anywhere.
right.
Right.
We're done, right? Well, it's kind of funny how you're sitting on the couch with my kids watching Big Bang Theory one night, and life just creeps itself back in, right? You just kind of fall back into this same rut that was in before. And I felt it. Boy, I felt it. You know, and we're watching our program, and I remember a commercial come on, some Xbox game, or I don't even remember what the commercial was, but being it was before Christmas, all us parents know what's going to happen next, right? When the kids see a commercial that they want. I mean, sure enough, it was like, Dad, can we get this? Can we get this new Xbox? And I don't know, Carmen, it just hit me perfectly, right? I'm here struggling on this couch as a dad, trying to figure out what's good for my kids, what's good for me and my family. What is this world about? What is this life for? I just experienced this amazing, you know, event where a project we built the bed for kids that didn't have any beds. My kids have beds, but they want an Xbox. They already have an Xbox. Why don't they appreciate that? I mean, just right,
Right. A lot's
this
going on. Yeah.
noise going on in my head, and then a single tiny moment, you know, just this little voice popped in my head, said, "You know what? Don't miss out on the same opportunity to teach your kids." Because you know what? You can sit and talk all you want. You can show videos and pictures and testimonies all you want. But until you get out in the garage, right, and build it yourself, you just don't have the same event. It's not the same feeling, right? The same impact. So I just got up, didn't say a word, just got up from the couch, started walking to the garage. My kid said, "Dad, where are you going?" You know, Big Bang's on, right?
Right.
And I said, "You know what? I got leftover wood. I'm going to build another bunk bed, and you're going to come and help me." right?
What they say about that.
At first they were like, what are you talking about? But actually, generally, they were excited, right?
Yeah.
My daughter ran into they went and go change the clothes that came out. Of course, she was in her pink tutu, right? Because she's like 7.
Uh-huh.
My son's in his favorite Boise State sweater, right? And we're out in the garage and we're just going to town. I've got pictures of them drilling and hammering, boards together. It was really special, right? Because I wanted them to feel the joy of service. I wanted them to appreciate the things they had, just like I taught the Boy Scouts. Well, the irony of all of this was my tiny moment wasn't to solve child bedlessness. It was to help my kids.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Yeah.
But now we had this bed completely finished, this bunk bed in my garage, no idea what to do with it, right? Child bedlessness was ended. And so someone recommended, hey, why don't you put it on one of these, I don't know, buy, sell, trade groups on Facebook?
Okay.
Now, I wasn't a big Facebooker, so I had no idea what that meant. But I'm like, okay, free bed out to the community. This will go well.
Right.
So I put it out there. And 2 things happened that totally shocked me. The first thing was how many people posted on this or commented on this post, right? People I'd never met before from out of town, even states over, right? Or friends that I hadn't talked to in 20 years commented on this post. And then the second thing was they all knew kids that were sleeping on the floor.
Wow.
I mean,
Really?
not just, and they shared with me, look, a house fire. So they're in a 8-passenger van, right? They're sleeping on concrete. They're sleeping on pallets. There's 4 or 5 to a bed. It just blew me away how many and the conditions that these kids were sleeping in. And I remembered, listen, I wanted this bed to go to a really special need, right? And these were all amazing and horrible all at the same time situations. Well, a friend of mine called me and said, hey, Luke, I saw your post. Have you delivered that bed yet? I said, actually, no. She says, well, let me tell you about Haley. I said, I'm all ears. Haley's a 6-year-old girl that has never slept on a bed before. She's only slept in the backseat of her mom's car. They were homeless. And my friend was helping them get into and it helped them get into a house.
Yeah.
And I thought, perfect. This is exactly what I wanted. So I loaded this bunk bed up. Me and my buddy went out and delivered this bed to Haley. Now, I've seen poverty before. I've witnessed it. I've been a part of helping and volunteering and especially foster care or transitioning homelessness. I've seen these situations before, but I'd never walked into it looking at it through the eyes of a 6-year-old. And when you do that, boy, it's a different perspective. We walked into the house and there was nothing. There's nothing in the house. There was no couch or TV to watch cartoons on like I did when I was young. There was no table or chair to sit down and eat cereal at in the morning like I did. Right. The only thing in the house was a can of soup that was sitting on a hot plate. That was it. And I mean, and you couldn't tell the difference though from Haley. She was so excited that she had a house. She didn't know why we were there. And I remember leaning down to him and said, Haley, why don't you show me where you sleep? Where's your bedroom? And so she raced back in this room, brought us back.
Oh,
They're
wow.
so excited, right? But boy, Carmen, you could imagine what this looked like. I mean, there was holes in the carpet, tears in the wallpaper. The closet door was missing. It was dimly lit. But of all those things were hard to look at. The worst was when you looked in the corner of the room and there was a pile of clothes, and that's where Haley slept. She'd come
On
home
the
from
clothes.
school.
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah, she'd come home from school. She'd put her PJs on, sleep on her school clothes. I mean, shirt was a pillow and pants were a blanket. And then the next day put those same shirt and pants on and go to school.
Yeah.
And I being this trying to be tough farm kid from Idaho, right? Trying to hold it together. I tell you what, I mean, I was not ready for that. I was not.
Yeah.
I had heard my Boy Scouts talk about their experience, but much like I was teaching my kids, until you're in the room, right?
It's so different.
Oh, it's so different, and I was upset at first. I mean, I was like mad almost that this is going on in my own hometown. And then I got pretty excited because we, of course, brought a bed for Haley, and she didn't know it, but we started bringing in these pieces of bed and putting it together. And I remember watching little Haley, and I wanted to see what her reaction was. And sure enough, I mean, she didn't disappoint. I mean, it was like Christmas morning. She just erupted. She came over and hugged me and my friend, these 2 strange dudes in her room making all sorts of racket. And then she did something I'd never seen nor will ever forget. She went over to this bunk bed, wrapped her arms around it, and gave it a big hug and kiss. I had, right?
Wow.
Never seen a child kiss a bed I mean, something as ordinary as a bed, because
Mm-hmm.
she loved it so much. And I tell you what, if that wasn't enough just to rip that heart right out of your chest, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you look up at mom, and
Mm-hmm.
here's mom, a single mom, right? Tears just
Mm-hmm.
pouring down her face. Hmm. And I was raised by a single mom too, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, this is hard to, sometimes hard.
No. Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
I knew what each one of those tears meant. I'd
Yeah.
seen my own mom struggle. The pain and the guilt and the worry and the frustration and all of this trying to provide for her kids, doing the best she can. And unfortunately, a bed was just a luxury they couldn't afford, which is
Mm-hmm.
a terrible thought,
Mm-hmm.
And I tell all your listeners, tell everybody that, listen, if you would take just 60 seconds of your life right now, stop what you're doing and just think about what it would be like to be any age, let alone 6 years old, and not have a bed. You
Mm-hmm.
know, you wake up, I'm sure you're sore, you didn't sleep well, you're certainly
Mm-hmm.
not ready to go to school and try to learn and compete with the other kids.
Mm-hmm.
You usually get bad grades because of this, which, that's always hard on a student. And that's
Mm-hmm.
just physical, mentally, these kids can't have sleepovers. They
Right.
can't have friends come in their room. They don't want people to see this. And so
Mm-hmm.
they go to their friend's house, which is fine,
Mm-hmm.
other than you walk into little Johnny's room, he's not only has a bed, he's got throw pillows.
Yeah.
What message do these kids see when they and get when they see that? And worse
Mm-hmm.
yet, Carmen, when we have a bad day, boss was rough, we lost a client, a friend was mad at us, or worse yet, we get the flu or we're
Mm-hmm.
sick. I mean, tell me, the one place on the planet that you could choose to be at, it's
Go
going to be your
straight to my
bed.
bed. Yep. Yeah.
Absolutely. I speak all over the country. And I stay
Yeah.
at, some nice hotels and stay in some really comfortable beds. But I'll
Mm-hmm.
promise you this, there ain't no bed on this planet I'd rather sleep in than my own.
Yeah. True.
Which tells you it has nothing to do with comfort. It has to
Mm-hmm.
do with security. And it's a
Mm-hmm.
sanctuary, right? This is your safe
Absolutely.
place,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I think that's something we don't think about is something so universal as a bed,
Yeah.
and how like the implications of not having one,
Yeah.
and how it really kind of bleeds into all the things that you just mentioned,
Right.
and
Well,
impacts so many other aspects of life.
correct. I mean, it's. I had a friend of mine tell me, he said, Luke, this is a long time ago. He said, Luke, it's interesting that you name your organization the acronym of SHP.
Mm,
I said, why is that? He's like, me and my sister, she was just a little younger than he was, grew up in a pretty rough home, right? He didn't tell
mm-hmm.
me the whole story, but it was a pretty rough home. He says when it got really bad, him and his sister would go to their SHP, which is their secret hiding place, and it
Oh,
was their bed, right?
mm,
And
mm-hmm.
that really is that takes a toll on a kid and even a
Mm-hmm.
parent, right? And I
Yeah.
remember sitting there, looking at Haley crawl into her bed, looking at mom and just knowing what's going through her mind. Right then and there, Carmen, I thought to myself, okay, this is way more than just a bed, right? And
Mm,
that little spark of passion I felt, the week before just grew into a full-fledged, flame in my chest.
right.
Listen, I'm a farm kid from Idaho that loves hunting, loves fishing, loves
Mm-hmm.
outdoors, loves, college football on Saturday, all this stuff. And I've loved it for 35 years. And I kid you not, just like that, none of it mattered anymore.
Wow.
It didn't
Yeah.
matter anymore.
Mm,
That act, that following that tiny moment, that and acting on it brought a passion to me in my life, which
mm-hmm.
I never knew even existed. I didn't know
Mm-hmm.
you could feel that strong about something. And I remember driving home with my buddy. We really didn't say much to each other. It was that overwhelming.
Mm,
And I remember looking at him going, or thinking to myself, me and my kids spent a couple of hours, couple of nights that week and built a bed to solve that problem. Yeah,
mm.
that's well worth my time. Right. And
Yeah.
I looked over to my buddy when we got home. I said, you know what? No kid's gonna sleep on the floor in my town if I have anything to do with it. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's how committed I was. And so
Yeah.
we just started building beds.
And that, so I'm guessing that ended up leading to what you have now, which is Sleep in Heavenly Peace,
Correct.
which is the nonprofit that you founded.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. We went when we started building beds, right? Because we
Mm-hmm.
had this list on this post I put together. Yep, I'm going to solve child bedlessness. So I thought, so we started building beds. We built 21 beds before, Santa showed up and delivered them all. That it was awesome. It was just a family Christmas project.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the next year we wanted to do it again. And the
Okay.
more we delivered, the more kids we found out were in need. And the more people wanted to help. And so, hey, we can't finance this all ourselves anymore. Plus, we had people that wanted to give us money. So I guess we'll just be what they call a charity, whatever that means. And however you do that, we'll figure it out, right?
Right,
So we were a charity. And again, the more we built, the more people found out and wanted to be a part of it. Kind of like the night that they went to go deliver the bed. People just loved it. They'd never heard of it before. And like me, I mean, it was such a shock to think that there's kids in our country and our, town that don't have beds. Who thinks like that? Who even knows that? Right. And so as we did this more, and pretty soon friends and family from states away said, hey, why don't we do this in our hometown? And I said, great, we'll put you on as a chapter, whatever that means, but we'll put you on as a chapter, right?
Yeah.
And then we were featured on a hit Facebook watch series called Returning the Favor, which was hosted by Mike Rowe, Dirty Jobs Mike Rowe.
Oh, I think so. That sounds familiar.
Super guy. He's the voice for Deadliest Catch, and
yes, okay.
You'd know who he is. Just super cool guy, big in the trade skills arena. Anyways, he was hosting a show where he would go around the country. He'd find nonprofits and highlight them and their founders. Surprise them. He'd just show up and surprise them, right? And then he'd give them something, whether it was money or a car or whatever. In our case, it was rent free on a warehouse that we got to use for a couple 3 years. But the biggest thing they really gave us was the megaphone that announced us and this problem to the world. It was viewed by 10 million people. And now, of course, this is about 8 years later. Now we have we've trained over 470 chapters in 4 countries, and we have just passed our 400,000th bed that we've built.
Wow. So I'd love to dive a little bit more into like these chapters that you have, because so you mentioned you're international as well. I think last we talked, it was Canada. That's all I remember. Canada.
We've been in Bermuda and Bahamas. They're kind of
Bahamas.
slow going, but yeah, mainly Canada and United States.
Right. Yeah. And then you have what's called chapters, which are chapters within states, right?
Within cities, really.
Within cities, and they kind of like act as like on the ground people or organizations that kind of implement the mission of Sleep in Heavenly Peace.
So what I learned, Carmen, was as more people let us know about kids, right, from all over all over the globe. I mean, I was getting messages from Germany and Australia and UK. We'll get there someday. But I started getting all these messages, and I realized, listen, if we are really going to try to solve child bedlessness in this country, it ain't going to be done by some farm kid from Idaho, right? It's going to have to be done by the communities that these kids live in. So rather than trying to solve that myself, building as many beds as we could, which would have been almost impossible, how about I just create a platform where people can do the exact same thing I'm doing, but in their own hometown? I'll take away all the administration garbage of reporting to the IRS and how do you get banking and insurance and registry, all that stuff. I'll take it off the plate for them, right? All they need to do is focus in on raising money, building, and delivering beds. That's it. And that's all our chapters do. They're all volunteers. There's no paid staff at the chapter level.
Oh, wow.
Oh, it's amazing. They're amazing people that really care about the kids that are sleeping on the floor in their communities. And I tell you what, every single one of them, will have no idea or had no idea that child bedlessness was as big as it is in their own hometown until they went and looked.
Yeah.
And when they finally looked, they came back and said, okay, yeah, we have to start a chapter.
Wow.
We have a very robust chapter training program, right? We have about a 2% attrition. We put on about 50, 60 chapters a year and only lose 1 or 2 and usually because someone moves or something like that, right? So we have a very successful chapter rate, a growth rate, and anybody can do it. That's why I always say, listen, I'm just a farm kid from Idaho. And any farm kid from anywhere or city kid or whatever kid you want to be, right? You can make a difference.